Thank you. It's an honor to be back at Cato. I have to ask, how many of you guys consider yourself Tea Partiers? Anybody? All right. How many of you guys consider yourself libertarians? Any Ron Paul guys in the house? Any objectivists in the house? Hopefully that's not a controversial question. Sorry, I had to tell that joke. Well, I sort of consider myself all of those things, and I don't consider that to be contradictory. And if you think about what the Tea Party is, it's really a mashup of a lot of different ideas built around a basic set of common principles. Common principles like the government shouldn't spend money it doesn't have, common principles like the Constitution, the rules of the game actually matter and you should treat everybody just like everybody else, and the idea that the government shouldn't get involved in things like health cares and deciding which car you should drive and stuff like that. And I know for some people in Washington, these are really radical ideas. They're scary, but I'm here to tell you that I think that is the small L libertarian center of America today. If you look at what independent voters are worried about today, you look at what Tea Party activists are worried about, it's quite the same thing. It's quite the same thing. This book is about what I consider, from a political science perspective, perhaps the most exciting and monumental clash, certainly in my lifetime, because you have all of these forces of disintermediation, all these forces of decentralization, multiple sources of information online, ability to connect with each other. We now get to vote, thumbs up or thumbs down, on whether or not you like Justin Bieber's latest haircut. That's power. That's real power. We get to decide for ourselves when, where, how we get information in our RSS feed. We get to buy things that we never got to buy before, what's been called the long tail on the internet. Even people with my bizarre tastes in music and literature, in one click, I can buy an original copy of Hayek's Road to Serfdom and the entire collected works of the Grateful Dead 1972 tour. That's what freedom is all about right there. And you have this disintermediation. Everything in our lives, it seems, is more about us. It's more about the choices we make. We are utterly liberated from the old mothership corporations that used to hire us at age 21 all the way until we got that gold-plated watch. And we were dependent on their underfunded pension system. It's not like that anymore. You go to monster.com. You don't like your boss, you think he's a jackass, you, in minutes, can find other options. It's a very competitive environment. It's very empowering. And this is true in almost every aspect of our lives, except when it comes to this town, except when it comes to politics. My friends Nick Gillespie and Matt Welch called the Republican and Democratic parties a duopoly, two very similar versions of the same thing. And it's certainly true when you think about all the institutions that are deciding and trying to decide for us what our health care is going to look like, what car we drive, every aspect for pushing us into one-size-fits-all top-down systems. This, from a political science perspective, this is fascinating. And the theory of this book is that all of these liberating forces have empowered the shareholders in the American enterprise to now know what's going on inside of the walls of the buildings. We know what's going on inside of Russell. We know what's going on inside the Ways and Means Committee that used to be lined with lobbyists on the outside, making those tweaks to that bill, those carve-outs to the latest tax bill, that we as the citizens, we as the shareholders, didn't find out about for years. It was a done deal by the time that the rest of us figured out that we had been screwed by a dirty collusion between committee chairmen and some crony capitalist, maybe a public sector union representative. It was always the insiders because they controlled the information, they controlled the conversation, and we in economics would call the rest of us rationally ignorant, right? And rationally ignorant simply means that you didn't have the time and the money to find out what these guys were doing to you. That's all changed. Think about it from a public choice perspective. All of the advantages of inside information, all of the advantages of hiring the best lobbyists in town to show up at Ways and Means has been diminished as we, as individuals, get that information in real time. A great example of this I talk about in the book is when Nancy Pelosi posted the Obama healthcare bill online, you had this fascinating decentralized process by which thousands, if not millions of people started to parse a very complex piece of legislation, share that information, and by the time they got to the August town hall meetings, the guy at the microphone who had stood up and shared this information with millions of anonymous friends literally knew more than Arlen Specter did. Arlen Specter didn't know an ounce of what was in that bill, but his audience did. That's power. That's fundamentally different than anything we've seen in the past. So you have this clash, and those of you at the Cato Institute might recognize the following sort of quote that Frederick Hayek once asked. How is it possible that so many millions of people with their unique knowledge, their unique perspective, that knowledge of time and place, understanding what their families need, understanding what they're trying to accomplish in their lives, how is it that so many dispersed people come together in a market and create something that's better than themselves? He asked that question when he was trying to explain to John Maynard Keynes why it was that imaginary macroeconomic constructs such as aggregate demand couldn't supplant all of this knowledge creation from the bottom up. But when you listen to Barack Obama today, when he stands in such unfortunate timing, when he stands in front of the newly financed, constructed Solyndra facility just 2 months before it goes bankrupt, and he stands there and says with a certitude that should disturb everybody, I know what's better. I got the smartest guys in the room together, and we are certain that this is the future of energy in America. This is the future of energy in the world. I know that green energy is the right thing to do because I talk to the smartest people at the Department of Energy, and they assure me that it's true. He said that to all of you. Hayek called this a fatal conceit, right? How could he know? How would you ever be able to outguess the millions and millions of people and the billions of energy consumers and all of the producers in global markets and all the countries like China that are competing with us? It takes a really smart guy to figure that out. Some would argue that that's arrogant even. But that's the clash, and that is a classic central planner's attitude towards things. You couldn't possibly let freedom work because it would devolve into chaos. There's no way to coordinate markets. Apply that same clash to political strategy. In Kentucky, the experts said that now Senator Rand Paul didn't have a chance, that all of the old rules of politics, including the support of the Republican establishment, the money, the endorsements, the name ID, that was the key. But something happened, right? Freedom happened. All of these people sharing a set of values and a set of goals spontaneously organized to produce what has emerged in 2010, and I would argue to this day, one of the most potent get-out-the-vote machines in the history of the United States. Nobody directed it. There was no central committee that said, now we shift from protesting to get out the vote. You Tea Partiers, did anyone send you that memo? No. You said to yourself, what do we need to do next? And you started talking to your neighbors, and you started talking to your Facebook friends, and you started organizing, you started getting the tools you needed to figure out how to do something that you probably had never done before. How do you pound in yard signs? How do you get to your neighbors and make sure that they show up to vote? And it wasn't just Kentucky. It wasn't just Utah with Senator Mike Lee, but you had again and again and again the old rules of politics, money, name ID, endorsements from Washington, D.C., being trumped by candidates who didn't have the money, they didn't have the name ID, but they had a shared set of values that they shared with a community of people that were doing something that they'd never done before. That's the new paradigm. And we saw it just recently in Texas with the election of Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was outspent 3-1. Ted Cruz was given a 0% chance of winning when he got in the race. And of course, incumbent for life, Senator Dick Lugar from Indiana also discovered that all of the old rules don't apply anymore. There's something going on, and that's power. And it's so powerful that even Van Jones is trying to figure out what's going on. I highly recommend. Does everyone knows who Van Jones is? Former Green Job czar, really famous as one of the most important community organizers on the left. And he gave a speech in 2010 at Netroots Nation, which is the epicenter of progressive social organizing. A lot of very tech-savvy people are there. And he was frustrated, and he asked this question out loud. How is it possible, speaking of the Tea Party, that so many rugged individualists can act collectively? He doesn't get it. How could that possibly happen? Because collectivists act collectively, and rugged individualists seemingly will do anything to anybody to get where they need to go, and it's all about them. They don't care about anybody else. They probably don't even talk to anybody else. And he's frustrated, and I wanted to actually quote this because I think it's fascinating. Van Jones, the community organizer, is trying to figure out how to recreate the Tea Party on the left. And he says to the group that the fundamental flaw of the 2008 coalition was that it was organized around a person. It was organized around Barack Obama. And he says, people let you down. Kind of an understatement from my perspective. But he says we can no longer rely on a single charismatic individual, but principles are enduring and values are enduring, and it's time for us not to just have a charismatic leader, but a charismatic network. That's the genius of the Tea Party. If Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin and Dick Armey had a press conference tomorrow declaring that the Tea Party is over, it wouldn't be over because it's built on a set of values. It has nothing to do with those people. It has nothing to do with leaders. It's a leaderless movement from the bottom up. Even Van Jones gets that. But here's the beauty of this. We're streaming live here, and my book gives away all the secrets of the Tea Party as best as I can figure them out. Our strategy is built on freedom. We think freedom works, right? And we think that voluntary association amongst free people based on a set of values produces something that's far greater than any individual from the top down could plan. And Van Jones is going to try to recreate that. Barack Obama is going to try to recreate that. The Republican Party is going to try to recreate that. But they can't possibly do it because they like order. They like order from the top down. They like hierarchies. They like czars. They like dictates. If we let this community continue to evolve and emerge, I think we have a strategic opportunity to achieve the goals that everybody in this room has fought for and shared for quite some time. And that, to me, makes this the most exciting period of my life. Thank you.